So tonight we have Dallas from City Team Ministries here in Chester. So let's give it up for Dallas.
Oh, what's up, guys? I'll probably end up standing up at some point here. My name is Dallas, and I'm a grateful recovered addict and a child of God. And I say recovered because I am recovered from the things that I used to do. And I never really understood that. And someone broke it down to me in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the Big Book of AA was the book that cracked that door for me, that led in that light of Christ. I was never really I kind of believed in a God, but when it came to Christ, the door just shut. On the first page of the Big Book, the first thing you read, it says, "This is the story of how thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism." And I was like, wow. So like this whole time I've been identifying myself as, an addict. And I got to thinking, like, what spirit would tell me to identify myself as that? It's like, not the God I serve, That doesn't mean I'm better or I can't go back to it, I know I can go back to it. What led me to recovery was many things. I kind of like to start from the beginning a little bit. I had a lot of trauma in my life that I never really thought was trauma because it was my normal. When I was 6 years old, my mom had died of cancer. She died in my house. And I didn't know that she was dying, but I knew something wasn't right. So she was in our living room in a hospital bed, and the day that she died, she fought it to the bitter end. Did not want to go. And I remember going upstairs into my parents' bedroom, and they had this window that opened up on the side, and it kind of led out onto the roof. And I climbed out on the roof, and I'm just crying. And I'm asking God why he's letting the devil do this. And I don't know where that came from. I was never brought up in the church. I had no idea. And so right from then, I think that's when my view on God was, I wouldn't say altered because I really didn't have a view of God, but it set in motion the negative thoughts that I had about it, So after my mom had died, my dad worked second shift at the shipyard down in Chester with, Marlin, so I knew Marlin since I was a little kid. And if anybody knows him.
My sponsor.
Awesome, he's a good dude. And so my sister, who's about 13 years older than me, dropped out of school and started toting me around with her wherever she went. And she was in her active addiction. So I saw a lot of things that a young child should not have been seeing. At the time, I didn't know what was going on, but I was seeing. I was walking into rooms, people having sex, people shooting up, and doing all kinds of whatever, and I just remember like shutting the door, and I'd go and cry. And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew something wasn't right. So as I got, that went on for quite a few years until my dad got off second shift, and my sister was in her full-blown addiction. My dad was trying to take care of her, so there's always this turmoil in the house constantly. So I never really got any direction from my dad. I just kind of did what I want. I was a latchkey child. Took care of myself. Became a very angry child in elementary school. Got into a lot of fights. and had to go see a counselor because of it. Didn't understand, why they were making me do that. Started experimenting probably about the age of 12 or 13. First time I tried a drink. I didn't like it at all. I remember I stole it was like a Coors Light from a closet that was left over from a barbecue. I'm like, this is terrible, but I drank it anyway. And then the first time I got drunk, I got so sick. I was throwing up all over the place. I went home. I came to, I don't know if I passed out, blacked out, don't know what happened, but I came to and I was urinating in my dad's dresser drawer, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And that's when I woke up. I was like, "What? Whoa." I was like, "I don't know," and I just turned around and left. And the next day, he's like, "Oh, you were sleepwalking or something. You're peeing in my drawer." And I was like, "Okay." I started smoking marijuana and drinking on the weekends, smoking marijuana on the weekends, and smoking pot every day, all through high school, drinking on the weekends. I think my dad just kind of didn't have the energy to deal with it anymore, was just burned out and didn't want to believe it, the path that I was going down. All through high school, I experimented with everything. I realized quickly that because of who my sister was, I could get whatever I wanted. So I had a lot of people coming to me to get things, and I was doing all kinds of things. I had a period in my life where I smoked a lot of PCP and LSD, and my senior year of high school, 10th grade in high school, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And the teachers in my school just really didn't care what I was doing at that point. I was coming into school drunk, high, and no consequences for it. I think that they just felt sorry for me. By the time I was my dad beat the cancer, and then in 12th grade, I had tried meth for the first time. Remember, I did it, I liked it, and then sitting there in my room at night, and I was like, this is absolutely terrible. I do not like this. I can't sleep. And I stood up to go to the bathroom, and I just felt this flood of heat from the back of my head all the way to the front, and my head started throbbing. And then the room just started breathing and closing in. And then I passed out, and I woke up naked, throwing up in the bathroom, throwing up all night long with this headache, had no idea what was going on. My dad woke up in the morning, and I told him what was going on. And my dad is this older Irish man who, you didn't go to the hospital unless your arm was falling off, And he's like, "You don't look so good. Maybe we should go to the emergency room." So we went. They did x-rays, everything that they have to do. And they came back and said, you have a brain aneurysm that's leaking. And I had no idea what a brain aneurysm was. I just said, okay. Come to find out, doing the methamphetamine, I was born with this brain aneurysm, and the meth had raised my blood pressure so high that it started leaking. It didn't burst, but it started leaking, and that's why I passed out. I was in the hospital for Christmas, my birthday, New Year's. I was in there for about almost a month. Woke up having seizures, couldn't, really walk. I had to go to PT to learn how to walk and everything. The day I get home, I'm in my room, just, I was told to just take it easy for a couple weeks. I found a little bit of meth that I had left, and I did it. And I said to myself, I'm just going to do less than last time. And it was just like that first time that I got drunk. The next morning I woke up, I said, I'm never drinking tequila again. I'm sorry, do you have a glass of water or something?
Yes.
Thank you. My mouth is really dry. So after I graduated high school, I started doing a lot of cocaine. This girl that had lived in my neighborhood had moved back into the neighborhood, She moved away, started dating her. She was on heroin, and that's really when my addiction took off. We were partying a lot together. She had gotten a lawsuit because she was hit by a drunk driver going the wrong way on the Schuylkill, and we just blew through it. Blew through it. Thank you. You know, we ended up moving to Kensington, and I was just right there, like in a 4-block radius, had anything I needed, right? I had my booze, everything I needed. We ended up, you know, we eventually ended up breaking up, but in the meantime, things got really, really bad. After the money was gone, she started tricking, and I was like, it's okay as long as you bring him to the house. I know who it is, what's going on, right? And I remember thinking to myself at that time, like, I cannot believe I'm letting this happen. I cannot believe this. But I was in such a grips of my addiction. I had started doing heroin, and it was probably one of the darkest times of my life. We broke up. We each went to rehab. I had a little bit of time, a few months. We got back together, got a place together. We stayed sober together about a month, and then we relapsed. And that night, I remember, we got high, and she didn't wake up in the morning. I woke up next to her, and she was already gone. And, I remember just ripping and running after that and thinking to myself at the same time, like, Dallas, don't you think that this is enough? Then shortly after that, my dad got cancer again. And this time he said, I'm not fighting it. And I was very, very resentful for that. I said, you beat it the first time, why aren't you fighting it the second time? I was scared to be without him. I had that safety net of home and unconditional love from my dad. So he passed away. We had to sell the house. And I remember thinking to myself, how dare you leave me to sell the house, the cars, and just like deal with all of this? Living in this empty house. Like, how dare you do that to me? Then after that, it just really, I thought it was bad before, it really went downhill. I was in and out of rehabs, in and out of jail for a couple of years. Just could not maintain anything. Drinking a fifth of Jägermeister a day, getting whatever kind of dope I could get and whatever to keep me going. Eventually being homeless, living out of my car. I look back on it, and I had this cycle of every morning I would wake up feeling like crap from drinking and being dope sick, and saying to myself, I'm not going to drink tonight. And I would go to the dope man. I'd get off work. By the time I got off work, I'd be at the liquor store. And then as I was drinking, I'm going to say, I'm going to kick dope. I'm going to start kicking tomorrow. I'm going to wean off. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then the next day, the same cycle. That went on and on and on. And I really believed it. I really believed it. Every time I thought it, I really believed that that was going to be the day. Eventually things really came to a head. I had gotten out of jail. I went into a psychiatric hospital, and I had gotten out. Well, I went to the psychiatric hospital, then a recovery house, and then I had to turn myself in for something that I had done. I spent a few months in jail. I got out of jail and said, what am I going to do now? And I remembered City Team, and I was like, I stayed in the shelter, but I didn't like staying there because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. But at this point, I had about 4 months sober, and I couldn't understand why I was still miserable. Like, why am I still miserable? Like, drugs and alcohol are out of my life, and I'm still miserable. So I really had absolutely nowhere else to go. Like, I tried to get back into a rehab again, and they're like, well, you don't have a problem. You're 4 months sober. We can't take you. So I remembered City Team. I was like, they have a long-term recovery program. I knew it was faith-based, but I was like, I'm just going to go there, So I went there and, sat in the lobby for like all day. And they took me into the program. And I remember telling them everything that was going on, and I was just like, they're never going to take me. And they said, you're exactly what we're looking for. I said, wow, really? Okay. So that's where my journey with Christ began. It really began sitting down, reading the big book. It was being read to me, telling me what to highlight and underline and circle. And we got to the chapter of the agnostics, and in that section in there where it tells you about having the ability to have faith. Where was I putting my faith, right? So I clearly have the ability to have it. So the first month that I'm in there, I'm going around asking people, like, why are you so happy? Like, I'm miserable. I'm like, why are you so damn happy? You're living in a shelter. What's going on? They kept telling me I'm sober and I got God in my life. And the first few times I'm like, oh, come on. I didn't believe it. And then after a while, I had this moment of clarity. I'm like, all these people cannot be out to lie to me. They did not get together and say, let's trick this guy, And my third day being there, we were serving meals to the guests coming in at night, and I just started crying. A couple of the guys came around me and said, are you all right? What's going on? And the only thing I could get out, and I was snotting. I was like, it's not about me. For the first time in my life, I felt what it felt like to serve somebody else rather than myself. So I would attend all of the classes and just really ask a lot of questions. And God just started softening my heart, softening it. And I found my passion for cooking there. I remember sitting in the chapel one day. Like, I didn't have a burning bush, so to say. It just slowly started coming over me. I started seeing the evidence. I realized now what I was seeing was Christ's love through other people. Meeting me where I was, broken, and they just showed me love. And I said, wow. We were in a Bible study, and then it just came out of me. I said, I want Christ as my Savior. And I said, wait a minute, what did I just say? And I had to think about it, I had to really think about it. And, I realized that, because I used to think if God was, if Christ came for us and I'm still struggling with all of this stuff, why? And it took me a little while to realize it's not really what he can do for me right now, it's what he's already done. It's what he's already done. That's the gift. I realized that today I might struggle the rest of my life. I might have things go on that are just absolutely terrible, but it's what Christ had already done. But through my recovery, working the 12 steps, I learned a lot about myself. I always like to touch on the steps because that was another key factor for my growth. Um, you know, I realized quickly that 1, 2, and 3 weren't that hard, and I do it every day, right? I'm sure we've heard, I can't, he can, I'll let him. That came to believe that, step 2, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, right? Or, God could restore me to sanity. And so I spent many years taking, here I am, here's Christ who's my highest power, and not using anything in between as a power greater than myself. Anything in between is a power greater than myself that I just did not utilize. God put people in my life for a reason, Like I said, Christ is my higher power, but I've never seen him come down. He didn't come down and say, Dallas, give me that needle. But he put so many people in my life that cared enough about me to do that. And I know that was God. I know that was God. Turning my will over. And I said, how do I do that? And somebody told me, well, you know what not to do. You know what not to do, so let's start there. Okay, I can do that. And then eventually I started learning what God's will for me is and what my will is and how it gets in the way of everything. I learned a lot about that through the acceptance page on 417 of the big book. I couldn't find peace or happiness until I accepted that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it's supposed to be at that time, because nothing happens in this world, by mistake. God doesn't allow things to happen by mistake. And I realized that, that acceptance didn't mean approval. I don't have to like it to accept it. So that was really helpful. Doing an inventory, man, was huge. Writing down everything, and through that I realized what my character defects were, how hurt I really was inside, and also how much I actually hurt people, right? My whole life I spent playing the victim, right? And through that 4th step I saw 90% of the time I had something to do with it. I stepped on their toes and they retaliated. And I said, how dare you retaliate against me? And then so freeing to get all of that out, and then working on my character defects. And that was hard for a while for me. I kept on praying to God to remove them. And something clicked and it said, well, why don't you do something about it? I said, what do you mean I am? I'm praying to have it removed. And then I was reminded of the story of the guy on the boat, the guy in the house during the flood, and a boat came by and said, hey man, the house is flooding, get on. And he said, no, my God is powerful, he's going to save me. Goes up to the 2nd floor because the water's rising. Another boat comes by, get on. He's like, nope, I'm cool, God's going to save me. Gets to the roof. Helicopter comes by, get on. He's like, no, God's going to save me. The guy dies, he gets to heaven. He's like, God, I put all my trust in you, why didn't you? He said, dude, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. What else do you want me to do? When I was reminded of that story, I was like, wow, okay, I have to put the work in as well. I have to put the work in. My faith lies in God. My salvation lies in Christ. But while I'm here on this earth, I have to put the work in. I often think that was, since, the fall of man, we had to work. Right? Adam had to plow the fields. And so we had to put the work in. So once I started putting that work in, with the character defects, recognizing what they were and coming up with a plan for them. Like if I'm experiencing lust, what can I do? What can I do? Right? That's just one example. Like I would get out somewhere and I'd see a woman walking down the street and I'd be like, then I'd be like, oh wait, hold on. Let me go over here and do this so I'm not tempted to why am I going to mess around with that? Let me just divert myself. And I'd pray and just remind myself that's a child of God, that's somebody's daughter, whatever it took. You know, I had to put some action in to it. And so my attitudes and behavior started to change, and then my thinking started to change. Started making amends to people, and making amends to people that, and going there and saying, I did you wrong. What can I do to make it right? And not apologize. Because I've said I'm sorry so many times to those people. And I was told by me just saying I'm sorry could be triggering to them to say, here we go again. But to hear, what can I do to make it right, is like, wow, it's changing. No, the steps 10, 11, and 12, my maintenance steps, man. You know, got into a rhythm of doing my devotions in the morning, right? Doing spot checks throughout the day, checking my motives. You know, if I owe somebody an amends, to make them promptly. It was like I went through all this work to build this beautiful garden that was once covered with weeds. I pulled them all out, got rid of everything, planted all of these beautiful vegetables, and it's producing good fruit. And in order to take care of it, I have to go out there every day and pull the weeds in the garden. I had to do the same thing in my life. I had to get out there every day and pull the weeds in my life so it didn't overtake everything that I had just worked for. You know, and then, you know, 12th step, helping other people. It's just, it's so important to me. I think in the big book it says the root of our problem is selfishness and self-centeredness. The opposite of that is service, right? So, doing all of that, you know, my life started changing. I wish I could tell you I was sober ever since, but no. I had a couple of relapses. I can look back on them and see where I used to think that I don't know what happened. After a lot of searching and asking God for clarity, most of the time it always started with me taking my will back. Which, when I start doing that, it leaves room for the enemy to put doubt and fear into me. And that doubt and fear leads to anxiety, start worrying about the future, thinking about things that I can't change. And all that stress accumulated and not taking care of myself. And then one day it was just F it, right? Remember one day John actually called me. We were talking. He called my sister and said something's not right with Dallas. My sister called me. You know, I said, yeah, I'm messed up. I messed up big, you know. And that was only about 2 weeks after I got married. And now I'm in there worrying about, oh my gosh, is my wife going to leave me? What's going to happen? All this fear. And my case manager sat me down and he said, Dallas, are you ready to treat your recovery like Job? He said, if she leaves you, are you going to stay sober? Whatever happens, are you going to stay sober? The worst thing you could do is leave here and try to go fix what you messed up. You can't fix the problem with the same thinking that caused the problem. And that really sunk in with me. I said, okay. And I really put my nose down, stopped beating myself up over it. That process of guilt and shame, you know, that doesn't come from God. You know, fear doesn't come, right? God didn't give us a spirit of fear. You know, made so many decisions in life based on fear or based on emotions and feelings, and it never ended well. It always took me in the wrong direction. That's why I started realizing that feelings weren't facts, right? Just because I feel like I'm a piece of crap doesn't mean I am. You know, so that took a lot of work. But I know that I could not be where I am at in life without God. I know that my salvation is through Christ today. 20 years ago, there's no way. No way. And throughout those 20 years, I've had the ups and downs, lots of different things in life. A lot of good things in recovery and a lot of hard things. I remember started a new job, bought a new house. 2 weeks later, my wife fell down the steps, broke her neck. She was up in Jefferson, going up to the hospital every day, going to work. My work said, look, do what you got to do. We'll adjust your schedule. And then she went into a rehab, got an infection in her neck, had to go back to the hospital. When they're doing the surgery on the neck to clean out the infection, she went into cardiac arrest on the table. Died. 20 minutes they had to work on her. They brought her back. I thank God that they were able to do that. I mean, to me, that's an absolute miracle. 20 minutes. And she's fine today. She's fine. I know that's an act of God. I know that. The whole medical world will tell you that's not possible. 20 minutes. And going up to the rehab every morning, every evening, working at this new job. And, it was so important to me to stay with my group of brothers, right? 3 of my closest friends, I call accountability buddies, 10-step buddies, 2 men from my church and another man from AA, that we get together all the time, that I can tell anything, without judgment from them. I run things by them, and sometimes they tell me, what the heck are you thinking? I said, what do you mean? It made perfectly good sense to me. And they're like, oh, no, I wouldn't do that. Why don't you think about this or that? Do it this way or that way. I was like, okay. And then submitting to that, right? Having to submit to that. I know that is something that I've learned through my walk with Christ, is submitting to other men. I used to never be told what to do. You can't tell me what to do. And that took a lot of humility. And for me to walk with Christ, it takes a lot of humility. Every day I have to practice humility. I have to do things that I don't want to do. I have to do things that are humbling, right? To make things right. And by doing that, it deflates my ego, right? And without a big ego, my pride kind of shrinks too. And when my pride and ego are shrunken down, now I can serve God and I can be filled with the Spirit. I think it's impossible to be filled with pride and ego and the Spirit at the same time. There's just no room for it. There's just no room for it. And that's how I try to live my life today. I don't do it perfectly. When I make mistakes, I know I can go to the Lord. I can ask for forgiveness. And when I truly repent, He removes that guilt and shame from me. I missed one important thing. It was a guy sat me down many, many years ago and said, so you don't believe in God? He said, how long have you been, using? I told him. He said, how many times have you tried to stop? I told him. He goes, so based on what you were doing, you really think that you've been able to stay sober 6 months on your own. Like, and that's when I was like, wow. I'm like, I don't have an obsession. Like, that had to have been God that came in, grabbed that, and pulled it out of me. Because I tried every way possible. And it wasn't until I gave my life to Christ that obsession was lifted. Today, I get some thoughts, right? Don't we all, right? But I don't have that obsession about it, right? If I get that thought, I don't get scared of it, right? I know that I'm a warrior of God. I'm in his army. I've got all the protection I need from the heavens and down here on earth. I know just through the relationship with Christ, I know I'd be able to go to any one of you here tonight and be like, yeah, I got a problem. And that's something beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Most of you I don't know, but I'm willing to bet if I came to you, you'd help me. And that's a beautiful, amazing thing that I don't see anywhere else except for through that relationship with Christ. Thanks for letting me share, guys.